Just a couple of quick announcements. Don't forget that there is a silent auction online. Tonight at the closing ceremony, 7 o'clock, we'll be doing raffle here. It'll be really cool, lots of cool prizes. And then there's a pool party after that tonight at the pool here. I'd like to take a moment to thank all of our sponsors. They're why we're here. We can put this really cool presentation on while the talk is in progress. If you don't mind, this door is not, or none of these doors are for ingress, egress. Please only use the door that leads to the chill out room. I think that's it. So without further ado, this is Kevin Tyers here to talk about the stuff that you came to see him talk about.
Can everyone hear me all right? Yep. All right. It's weird. All right. So, yeah, we're going to talk about some stuff I learned while investigating the security clearance process. So, I got a bunch of disclaimers. The first one, very important, is that anything I say here is, my opinion alone. Doesn't represent the views of my company I work for now, or any companies I have worked for or will work for, and all that. So be cool and don't quote, this person from this company said this, because I didn't. This is not a talk about how to get a security clearance necessarily. I don't want anyone in here to make their decision about going for a job based on the things you see in these slides, but I think it's a good place that you can start thinking about it, or you can make inferences. Like if you're on cocaine right now and you have an interview next week, probably not going to go well for you. So clean up your life. And the third one is I am not infallible. The data, I feel comfortable saying, is probably like 95-ish% correct. I did some basic natural language processing on a ton of government documents to get these numbers. I've done a lot of spot checking, and so far all my spot checking shows that my parsing is correct. But if you find a small thing that's wrong with it and you want to let me know, that's cool, but know that I'm aware that there may be some slight incongruities with what we're seeing. So who am I? This is a Shrugs talk. That's sort of my hacker name. I blog at The War on Shrugs. So if you're interested in reading about things that are useless, that's a good website to check out. In my professional life, I do NetSec and DevOps stuff, but you don't really care about that in this case. So, and my real name's Kevin, and you can find me. It's pretty easy. A few years ago, I found myself in a position that required a security clearance, and this was not something I set out to do. I like America. I think it's pretty all right. Been here, 29 years now, but I don't necessarily live a life that I think is conducive to having the government watching me all the time. I'm not a criminal or anything, but I just don't like the idea of Big Brother, constantly be able to dictate the things that I'm allowed to do. So that was the genesis of this talk. So I was sitting in an office in one of my client sites and having a panic attack because, oh my God, how am I going to get a top secret clearance? I did mushrooms last fall. And then I discovered this website that had a ton of data on it. And it's fascinating to read through because it's a lot of lawyer speak. It's all judges and lawyers and interviews with the applicants. But there is a ton of it. It's like 20,000 documents almost. So, can't read 20,000 documents. I'm too lazy to do so, at least. So I wrote some parsing in Python to look at that. And it was cool because I'm just generally interested in exploring data. I think that being able to code is a rejection of the limitations of our meatware, and so it allows us to interact with this sort of crazy information zeitgeist that exists out in the world. And it's almost a transcendentary process. Did I mention that I've done mushrooms before? Anyway, I'm crazy. Yeah, just once, absolutely. So it was really fascinating to go over this stuff because actually a good friend of mine, Jeff, who's in the room, who will remain anonymous, we were just looking over the data and grepping through it. And we found someone who was fascinated with what are called ground devils, which are like trolls who are controlling the world. And he has a secret cat that he could tell government secrets to. I'm not kidding. If you want, we can try to find the decision at the end. And some of it's like, wow, this guy's schizophrenic, so he's categorically crazy. And I don't want to make fun of him, but it's fascinating to know that these sort of people go through this process and they have to actually appeal these what are called statements of reasons. And he really thought he could get a government security clearance with a secret cat that he told secrets to. It's awesome. So it's like a combo of stats and drama. Also, be careful. I'm going to give everyone a link to the code if they want to download all the decisions themselves. But there's also some... Does everyone mind if I swear, or should I stay away from that?
You can totally fucking swear.
All right. There's some disturbing shit you're going to come across. Like, don't grep for child, please. It's awful. I mean, it's rough. So that being said, I want to respect the privacy of the people who went through this process, because I was in the process for 3 days, and I thought I was going to die of a heart attack every moment. So I appreciate that this was a struggle for them. This was very stressful. Most of these people didn't get clearances, and so they have to think about, how am I going to feed my family? That's a real question. So we're going to have some fun looking at this, but again, I want to make sure that we maintain the integrity of their privacy. So the data source I used was this dod.mil, Dodge C Doha Industrial. The info is considered public, so that's cool. I made sure that this is legal for me to talk about, but yeah. So you can go there and read it, and it's cool. So now we're going to get into the only kind of hard to follow thing in this. When you apply for security clearance, go through the process. We'll talk about that in a second. And then the applicant and the judge will decide whether to give you a clearance or not. If they give you a clearance because you have no what are called considerations, and a consideration is something in your life that means the government thinks you might not be trustworthy. If you had no considerations, you're an Eagle Scout who's lived in his mom's basement, you've never seen a naked woman, you've never had a drink, you've never even read the word marijuana, you're probably going to get a clearance. And that I was wondering if that was going to come up, but yeah, I mean, if you're LDS, you probably got a good shot, So, and also people like me, who I actually didn't go through the interview because I wasn't going to waste anyone's time. But if you self-select out, also there's no decision written. So based on that, I think, and this is a total guess, but out of 100 decisions, let's say, 80% of people, I would guess, have at least one consideration. So, reasonably high efficacy. And if you're sitting in this room and you have a question about whether you can get a security clearance or not, you're probably going to be in the considerations. Yes.
Is there some box you actually check to self-select out, or do you use that also people who just decide to?
Excellent question. At this stage of the process, you just simply do not respond to the statement of reasons. That's an excellent question. Yeah. Awesome. Cool. Yeah, and there's going to be, so if you've gone through this process and you're like, man, this guy doesn't know what he's talking about, I've definitely talked to a ton of people and putting this talk together who were like, oh, that's not what happened to me. The FBI agent came to my house and, punched my mom and said, don't come back. But yeah, so I would love to hear those variants though. But please know that I did a lot of rigorous research, so yes. Yeah. So, I really like when people tell us how they've done the research that they've done. So the tools that I used was Python, because I'm a nerd, and Request and Beautiful Soup were absolutely invaluable. And Beautiful Soup, oh man. So real quick, I had to reformat this presentation 8 minutes ago because I made it for 16.9, so this is an older version, so just hang in there with me, right? And I in red here, you can see it says Scrapey. I actually tried to use Scrapey, but it was kind of unwieldy, and I try to shoehorn using things to learn how they work. So I like to point out my own failures to a group of people who I don't know as much as I possibly can. So that's why I've listed that there. And then everyone's favorite, egrep oxed, because there's just a ton of flat text documents, and it's easier to get through data using that. And then the library that saved my life, which is PDF to text. So starting in 2006, all of the decisions that were posted were in PDF format. So you couldn't grep them. That was really annoying. But I found PDF to text, wrote a script, wrapped it up, and ended up textifying 10,000 documents. And so far, it's been awesome. So if you need to go from PDF to text is the way to go. And then also another failure is Elixir. I'm really interested in that language, but I just couldn't get it to work in this case. So my process was, I had a process, there it is. Right. So write some code, grab the data, read it, say, all right, I wonder what questions I have about this data. So I'm going to write some more code, I'm going to grab some more data, I'm going to read it until it starts, it goes from Play-Doh to sculpture. And I did this more times than I So I didn't write interroga, by the way. That says interrogate. It's just formatting weird. So now I'm worried about the formatting. But yeah, you can kind of see just this over and over and over again, an Ouroboros of exploration. Yes. So now let's talk about security clearances themselves. This is for the U.S. I mean, NATO has clearances, Canada has clearances, all the countries of the world have clearances, but given that at the U.S., I assume a large majority of you are in the U.S., so that's what I focused on. The levels, and I know this is hard to see. Confidential, didn't see a lot of confidential. Secret, top secret, those are the two big ones that people see. You have compartmented, or SCI, which is special compartmented information. And then there's other clearances like the L and Q. L is equivalent to secret, Q is equivalent to top secret for the Department of Energy. So if you have a Q clearance, that means you know where the nukes are and where they're pointed. And then Yankee White, you'll hear it referenced in the media every now and then as like the highest level of security clearance. What that actually is if you work directly with the president, you have to get a Yankee White clearance. And I've heard it's very rigorous. All right, so some of the steps you're going to take. I heard someone ask me about the SF-86, so I'm legit here. So you have the EQUIP, which is the online questionnaire that you can fill out, and it's, I don't know how long it is. I actually never filled out an EQUIP, but I filled out an SF-86. And the SF-86, before you have to request extra pages for all the bad shit you've done, is 125 pages base. That being said, it's actually really useful to have because it's like, your whole life history for the last 10 years includes your address. You have to have references for the places you've lived. So imagine 10 years ago where you were living. Like I was in college. I knew none of my neighbors, so I was like freaking out. Like, how am I going to prove that I lived in Scottsdale for a year, So that being said, I still have my SF-86 sitting around for when I have to apply for stuff. It's really cool. This guy knows what's up.
Chinese have it too.
That's true. But I didn't submit mine, right? So I'm like one of 8 guys. Yeah. I saw it. It was just absolutely stained with my tears. And I was like, I can't send this in. So, yeah.
Mine was in EQUIP, so yeah, the Chinese have it.
Yeah.
It's nice to have that PDF. Yeah, when you go apply for jobs and they want to know what you were doing 20 years ago.
It's all there. Yep. So if you go through secret, you're going to go through a NACLC, which is like a national agency and local credit check. Basically, do you have good credit, which is a huge deal, and are you a criminal? If you go through top secret, that's when you start really having fun. That's the single scope background investigation. So they'll interview you, and they'll interview your references that you've supplied, and then they're going to ask you your references for references. So you have this, ever-expanding circle of people who are going to tell the government all this stuff you don't want the government to know. So that's real fun. Polygraph. This is the one I had a question about. This is the one that a lot of people ask me about when I talk about this. You will, for top secret, you have to take counterintelligence, which means they're going to try to determine if you're a spy or not. If you're going for special compartmentalized information or Yankee White or any of the higher level clearances, you also have to do a lifestyle polygraph, and I've heard that that's not a particularly fun experience. Anyone in here done a lifestyle poly? Was it fun? No. Yeah. So this is my lying difficulty graph. So don't lie. It's like they have a whole section essentially on like if you lie. There's actually a lot of decisions where it's like applicant mitigated all security concerns, but they lied, so we're not going to give it to you. So something to be aware of. These are arbitrary numbers, but the more people you know, the less you can control. This is why I don't necessarily believe in that many conspiracies, because if there's thousands of people in the government that know that it's jet fuel doesn't burn hot enough to melt steel beams kind of stuff, that someone would have at least talked, but maybe I trust too much. So this was a fun question. Does the president get to see everything? There's no consensus on this. So as far as I can tell, he may not have a need to know, so he can't see the information. But as the head of the executive branch, he can declassify that information and look at it. So he kind of, yes, does get to see everything. But if he doesn't know to ask for it, right, that's the secret. The real puppet masters aren't telling him the fun stuff. All right, so that was kind of the intro. Hopefully you guys are hooked. Let's actually get into my findings here. And I hope these graphs look good on the screen. All right. So we're going to talk about the guidelines that they care about real quick, just point out what they're interested in. So I'm actually really surprised to find this out. You have to have allegiance to the United States to get a clearance. That's pretty all right. Personal conduct really comes down to, you didn't do anything else wrong, but we don't like you, so we're going to throw this in the personal conduct category. It's also where lying shows up. Psychological conditions, very tragic in a practical sense, but very hilarious from reading some of the decisions, secret cat and all that, right? Foreign influence and preference. That's actually two separate considerations, but I wanted a nice looking graph, so I made it into one. Financial, which is increasingly important. Criminal conduct, use of IT systems. I'll break that down in a second. Alcohol consumption. I know that's probably I saw a couple people's head pop up on that one. Like, wait, what? Handling protected information. Sexual behavior, which isn't necessarily what you might think, believe it or not. Drug involvement. CG09 For. And outside activities. And outside activities is work done on behalf of foreign governments, for the large part, as I could tell. So this is the decisions over time, and I thought this was interesting, right? So you have, September 11th, which happens around here, then an explosion in the, government intelligence complex, and then kind of a dip right here after Obama takes office, and the wars are starting to wrap up. 2015 is not on here, but we're on track to hit about this level for 2015. So it's going back up. And I think that's probably related to the more infosec jobs that are coming out. So this data is aggregate over anyone from cleaning staff to CEOs of private companies. I don't break that out. I'm just interested in the aggregate numbers. So yeah, it's interesting. In the 90s, it was really low for the most part.
Quick question.
Yep.
Are these numbers related to intelligence community clearance, or is it all federal clearance?
DoD clearances, so confidential, secret, top secret. Yep.
Would that wouldn't include like infraguard or other FBA?
Yeah, so I can get a security clearance, but I'm an infraguard, so woo! Yeah. So this is the same data, but this time matched up with approved versus denied. So you can see there's a lot more denied than there is approved. It's a pretty rigorous process as far as I can tell. This doesn't cover people who are in the military. So if you're in the military, you may get special treatment. Also, when you're in the military at 18, you haven't had a lot of time to do a lot of stupid stuff. So that works well for you. You get to 30 and you look back at a wreck of a life, and then you're like, oh no, what have I done? So you can see 2000. Man, 2000 was rough. Almost nobody got it. And this is the same data, again, stacked. Right? So 2000, an incredibly low number. And I verified that. It was strange. And even at the best of times, we're looking at a sub 40% acceptance rate into the clearance process. So keep that in mind. If you have some things in your life that may be a concern to the government before you apply for one of these jobs, because there's a chance you may not get to clearance. A good chance, sadly. So now this is my favorite slide. This is all the considerations that we talked about earlier, and it breaks it down over time. So you can see that this is not good. This is financial, right? So as time goes on, here's the housing crisis, and set it tapered off, and this is concerning. It's like, what the hell happened? Why is there so many people with bad debt problems? I know. In this economy? Oh, sorry. Yeah, there you go. Personal conduct is going to stay the same. Outside activities, you actually can barely see. Foreign, yeah. The one that decreases them. I'm sorry? Alcohol, that's a good question. Yeah, it's this. This is drugs, this is alcohol. Right, so this is it's non-negligible number of people who get in trouble for drinking.
So if you get a consideration, does that mean you don't get clearance, or is that just a concern?
It's a concern, right? So if I'm the judge and I say, hey, the fact that you drink a fifth of Jack Daniels every night is a very big concern to me. Would you like to explain why you do this? And then you say, it's because Jack Daniels is delicious. He might be like, well, I don't trust his state of mind, so I'm going to deny you. Or if the judge, good old Southern boy, it's like, I too love me some sour mash. You're all right. So that's the other thing is there's no quantitative of yes or no for sure. It is kind of at the discretion of the people who are going through this. And the one that's dropping is surprisingly criminal. So I think that's good. That's a good thing for our society. More poor people, but less criminals. Starting to sound like Europe now. Anyway.
I don't know. The media tells me only poor people are criminals.
That's a good point, right?
What's the attribute availability sexual? Is that just basically it's not disqualifying the gay anymore? Or?
Yeah, actually, that's a good question. So I was going to bring that up, but after 1996, being gay is no longer a disqualification condition. And I verified that. I mean, there's only two of the security clearances even mentioned the word gay, and it was people doing weird shit because they didn't want to be accused of being gay. It's kind of weird. But yeah. So this was, again, actually, let me replay this slide. This is how it changes over the years.
So these are flat out denials.
This is all considerations. Sorry. Yeah. Yep. Yeah. So there's 752 cases in 2014, which is almost half, that have a financial concern tied to them.
And they could have more than one.
Yes, they can have more than one. Yep.
Is there? Do you know how many? What were the maximum number of considerations on any one?
Yep, I have that. We get to that. Some of those were wild, man. So this is for all of them. I know you've been looking for the denials, and I'm trying to bring them in as much as I can. So for each consideration, here's the denial percentage and the acceptance percentage. Where I was most surprised is actually foreign. I know we're a melting pot nation, which makes us dope as hell, but we're pretty forgiving. If like you're from Pakistan and you come over and you want to come work here, like there's a decent chance you'll get a clearance. But if you have bizarre sexual proclivities, it's not looking too good for you. Same thing with criminal conduct. It's very hard to get a clearance if you have a record. Lying, 80%. Yeah. 23% of people get them. Yeah. Yeah. So that was interesting, just seeing like kind of what we care about, right? So given that drugs has a low percentage acceptance, I self-selected myself out. So this is financial. I'm going to call out some of the specific ones so we can talk about them. Financial, only 15% of the cases seem to have bankruptcy. So that was pretty surprising to me. I was expecting something that's a lot higher than that. And the highest debt we saw was $2.9 million. That dude had a bad couple years,
He's in Vegas.
Yeah. They went to too many B-sides, man. Here's the foreign considerations, just the top 10 countries, right? So China, Iran, a lot of Iranians. So either you're from Iran or you have family in Iran is what becomes a consideration. So anyone in here dual citizen? Cool. Well, one. So do you have a passport for your other country? Yeah, so you can't get a security clearance. Yeah, if you have a second passport, and especially if you've used that second passport in the last 5 years, you're pretty much done. But having a second citizenship isn't that bad. There's some people in here who do have dual citizenship. Yeah.
Even if that second passport is from one of the Five Eyes, okay?
That's a good question. We can try to find that.
Because I think my girlfriend has one.
Does the government know that? All right, fair enough. All right, we'll take a look. But yeah, overall 123 countries have, like Uzbekistan. We don't have any Uzbekistanis working in industrial stuff. No one had 100% acceptance rate, but some of the countries that had 1 or 2 applicants were denied. So yeah, not a huge deal. Criminal, there wasn't a cool way to make a graph of this, but I thought this was pretty cool. And before 2008, if you had served more than a year in jail, you were automatically denied. You could not hold a clearance. After 2008, you can, and there's people who have served 25 years in jail now who have security clearances. And then one murderer who was charged with murder, pled down to manslaughter, spent 11 years in jail. He got his clearance, so good for him. There's a lot of murder, man. Kind of a surprising amount of oh yeah, I shot her. Yeah, there you go. And then that guy apologized to Dick Cheney. That's how much of a bamf Dick Cheney is, right? So this is my personal favorite slide for reasons there's no way you can infer. People seem to like cocaine, ecstasy, heroin, LSD, marijuana, meth, mushrooms, prescriptions, or your standard black hat party. So if you smoke crack, go home. That shit's whack, you know. And then if you've done ketamine, it also kind of takes you out of the game. Well, I was really surprised that more people have done mushrooms than marijuana have gotten clearances, which is pretty neat. But then you see this. There's a number of considerations. I mean, the denies for marijuana is more than all of the other drugs combined. So, man, I did not know that people like the booger sugar so much. Like, there's a lot of people who love cocaine, apparently. Alcohol! Yeah! I had a beer before this talk, just for this slide. So only 17% were tied to DUI. I was really surprised about that. You know, I'm from Phoenix, and we have real tough DUI laws, and I think like everyone spent a week in Tent City. Not me, though. Of course not. But 41 of them were for like arrest. Like a lot of, I don't know if you know about this, and this is a little graphic, but like dudes like to get drunk and pull their dick out. It's real weird. So like you kind of get a 2-for-1 on this. You get alcohol, or 3-for-1, alcohol, criminal, and sexual considerations. That's fun. Yeah, so public urination's one on there. Yeah, it's sad, really. And then 17% is for abuse, where like, actually this is kind of terrible, but if you're in an AA program, that's sort of considered a strike against you, because they consider that evidence of abuse, which it probably is. I don't think many of us go to casual AA meetings on the weekend. And then sort of the honey pot, or the pot that's remained at the end, is people who admit to drinking and blacking out multiple times a week. Just anything that kind of seems like, you know, I wake up and I have 5 shower beers. Like, that's not good. Information technology, it's mainly porn. Not surprised. A lot of people looking at porn at work. So, you know, they call your employer and they say, why did you get fired? They're like, well, he was in the middle of a presentation, he alt-tabbed, and it was porn.com / God knows what / please don't look at this .jpg. That's what's up. So, mishmash of others, downloading stuff like with Napster, like seeing the Napster name again was kind of cool, is a really bad thing. They don't like when people do that. And improper document handling, so if you copy secret information onto a thumb drive, that's a bad thing. They're not going to let you do that. And then only 3 mention hack, because I tried to figure out like what hacking activities would be related to, and they were all denied. So hopefully you don't have any hacking convictions, or you're not, you know, exploiting stuff on your network when you're not allowed. Yes?
I'll admit I'm not too positive. For this one in particular, it was really interesting. It was a disclaimer on there, not for approved work. A disclaimer, so like if you act for work and it was approved, it was not counted against you.
Yes, yeah.
So I found that one really interesting.
Cool.
Also, just any generic type of access to system, you don't have permission to access it.
Cool. Awesome. Thanks so much. Yeah. So think about that. You know, like hunt teaming, when you have the hunt slip from your boss is probably okay, but if you're an accountant and you're popping shells, so the most concerns was 5. Actually, a lot of ones were 5, which was crazy. The most common combo, though, was alcohol, drugs, criminal conduct, financial, and personal conduct. Not really all that surprising. I mean, if you have all those, your life is probably kind of a wreck. Maybe not, or you're awesome and you like really keep everything together, and like hats off to you at that point.
Did you ever see one incident that accounted for every single one?
No, but we'll try to find one. I'm going to be posting about this on my blog, hopefully when I get back. So yeah, some of these questions you guys have, I'd be happy to answer on there, and you can DM me on Twitter. It's a good question. I'll look at that real quick. 86% of decisions appear to be for men. I don't know if that's surprising or not, but something I found. And as I alluded to earlier, there's 712 decisions in 2015. One slide I didn't put on here was the sexual stuff, because I had to get this approved through work, and I didn't want to give them any chance to say that I couldn't do this. But there's some terrible things, like molestation, that are on there, but actually most of it's prostitution. So if you buy a prostitute and you get in trouble for that, it's really bad for you. It's really, really bad if it's not actually a prostitute, but it's a cop, because then also you get slapped with like criminal conduct and stuff. So
712 decisions. Is that 5% of the numbers correct? That's basically
712 or less than 712 people that will apply for this?
Yeah, so usually there's like, something I should have mentioned, thank you for reminding me, is this process can take like 18 months, which I can't imagine enjoying any of those 18 months. Most of these were for people who applied in 2014, went through their SSBIs and NACLs, and now the judges have said, wait, you're crazy. Why did you like set a car on fire and then go smoke crack ketamine with, you know, a DJ in Canada kind of stuff? So yes, yeah, I didn't break down the acceptance denials because I wanted to kind of just stick to 1999 to 2014, but we can take a look at that.
I thought I would expect it to be a higher number of people.
Yeah, so this is only for industrial personnel. Sorry if I didn't make that super clear, but military, and if you actually like work for the Pentagon, you're outside of this, but it's like if you work for a large communications provider that has been pumping an incredible amount of data about the American public to the government, and you get a clearance in that company, then that would be in this, right? So the process, yeah, these are adjudicated cases, exactly. So yeah, and that's what I was mentioning earlier, is if there's no considerations, then you don't show up here.
So is this DIDNet? Or DIDNet, Defense Industrial Base?
I'm not sure. I didn't come across that terminology in my looking. Because some of these people are literally applying to be janitors in SCIFs. So, I mean, they don't actually get access to the networks or the documents, but they could be exposed to it, and they just have to mitigate the concerns that the government may have about that. Secure information facility. So that's where like your government SOCs would be, you know, or just anywhere where you have that sort of stuff. I don't really know what the clearance process is going to be like in the future. Whenever I talk to people about this, I always bring up the FBI is having a hard time finding people because people smoke weed, and the FBI is not cool with that. So on one hand, you have reactionary older people who want to not give clearances to anyone who's under 30. What?
Oh, we're just joking.
Okay. Yeah, there you go. So you have that pressure to make the process more rigorous and harder to get through, but you also have the pressure from, you know, in industry where Silicon Valley companies don't necessarily want to be tied to the NSA because we're a global economy now. So you're sort of seeing them demand less stringent standards. And also in information technology specifically, we're not really a follow the rules all the time type of culture. So, you know, I think that as the government feels the shortage of professionals more and more, they may have special considerations just for tech people. But who knows, right? That's just total conjecture. So my code will be up on my GitHub. I'm not going to release these slides necessarily, but I'll have the data in a different format on my blog. Again, don't base your decision to get a job that requires a security clearance just on me. Sorry. But read some stuff yourself. There's a lot of good stuff on like clearancejobs.com, I think, or .gov that talks about a lot of the things that the government's concerned with. But there wasn't a lot of data, and that's why I put this presentation together. So yeah, that's why I mentioned there's not data-driven. So before I open it up for questions, I would like to read you all the decision that made me decide not to go through the process. This is abridged, but I've tried to, you know, make sure I keep in the essence of the person. So, all right. This one wasn't summarized very well, and I actually like it's very fortuitous that I found myself reading this decision. And when I reached the end, I knew that I was going to drop out. Applicant is a 37-year-old married man with 2 children, ages 3 and 5. He earned a bachelor's degree in electrical engineering in 1996, graduating magna cum laude from a prestigious university, and finished within 3 years. While in college, applicant was the captain of the school's swim team. He remains active in his alma mater. In 2007, he was honored as the Engineering Mentor of the Year. Between 2007 and 2010, applicants' use of illegal drugs was limited to one. This is a decision in 2012, by the way. Applicants' use of illegal drugs was limited to 1 weekend per year. Typically, applicant and his friends will get together on Saturday morning, use LSD, then take the subway downtown to tour museums. Then would return. Oh no, it's getting good. Then would return to a friend's apartment, change clothes, go to a club, take MDMA or Molly for all you young kids, and then party all night. Applicant would then spend all day Sunday recovering from the drug binge. Ooh, so you see how this might be going. According to the applicant, the hallucinogens enabled him, while touring the museums, to engage in introspection and to, quote, think about the bigger picture of life and what he could do better with both himself, or do to better both himself and the world around him, end quote. Applicant stopped the annual ritual after 2010. He decided shortly after his first child was born that he wanted to spend more time at home, and he did not want his child to be exposed to such behavior. Also, he no longer associates with the friends with whom he participated in the annual ritual. Applicant no longer associates with his drug-abusing friends and has not used illegal drugs in 2 years. Once a year, 2 years before, just to clarify. Any positive inference from the fact that the applicant no longer associates with his drug-abusing friends is greatly outweighed by the nature and circumstance of the illegal drug use. Sidebar, just trying to be a better person. Applicant has not mitigated the drug involvement security concern. Applicant is an extraordinarily intelligent, highly successful man. He is well respected in his profession and mentors young engineering majors at alma mater. Given the nature, extent, and seriousness of his drug abuse and its recency, I cannot conclude that he has mitigated the conduct. In reaching the conclusion, I was particularly troubled by the nonchalant, nearly nostalgic explanation for choosing to abuse hallucinogens. On considering this case in the context of the whole person concept, I conclude that the applicant has failed to mitigate security concerns. Now, I'm not extraordinarily intelligent, and I'm moderately successul, but I agree with some of the things that this person has done, so I realized I had no chance, and I dropped out. So, if the government doesn't want people who are interested in bettering themselves and still care about their country, then I guess I won't help. So, questions?
All right, if you have any questions, I'll bring you the mic.
And also, this was a fantastic audience. I hope you guys liked it. This was great. It went better than I was expecting. Thank you so much. Also, get all sappy for a second. BSides was the first security, BSides Las Vegas a few years ago was the first security conference I went to before I was even in security, and everyone was so awesome and cool. This is still my favorite conference to come to, and the fact that I got selected to speak this year is hugely awesome, and you are all hugely awesome for being here for that. So, round of applause for yourselves, not for me, though. Thank you.
I had a quick question. Is the information for the person that they're seeking the clearance through available
It is not. So if you look at the decisions, it has all the names, social security numbers blacked out. And in the actual decisions themselves, they don't mention, there's probably enough information on some of these that you could really do some deep dive intelligence to find, but it's not easy. Speaking of intelligence, and I hate for the plug here, but I'm helping run a Intel CTF at DEF CON this year, where you actually track people down and stuff. So you should come by on Saturday, 10 to 2, to check that out and see me and my buddy Jeff, and we'll be working on that. So please come check that out.
Any
Sir?
other question?
I was curious, depending on the need in the government for a specific capability or a skill set versus the pool of candidates for that skill set, is there any sort of correlation in your research that says X number of individuals were denied by that correlation?
Yeah, so that's an excellent question. That was one of the areas where I failed, because not every decision talks about the area that the person was applying for, and it kind of changes through the years. So I wasn't able to get that data, but I'm going to continue to pick at it. And if I can do some, even just a sampling of search for InfoSec or something like that, that'd be great. Sir?
Trends as far as people that had more considerations, the types of work that they were doing or getting through versus a guy with one DUI having to get jacked, a janitor versus.
Yeah, that was something I liked. So the question was essentially, correct me if I'm misinterpreting, does the position that they're applying for seem to have a implication for whether they're accepted or not? Fortunately, it doesn't look like it. I mean, that guy who I read the decision for, who, in my opinion, probably should have passed based on a lot of the data that I saw, he was the CEO of his own company, and he's has a dozen patents or something, and he's brilliant, and they still denied him. Because in my opinion, and this is my opinion, is that I just don't think the agent liked that the guy wasn't remorseful. So.
That wasn't abuse either.
Yeah. But, I completely agree, and that's why I thought that, that's a great, example for me to read. But, think about someone who maybe, is part of a church that is commonly known by 3 letters, like L and a D and an S, and they worked really hard and avoided temptation. They don't drink coffee, and then there's this scrubby engineer from a liberal college who does mushroom or does LSD or whatever, and they're like, I don't like that guy. We wouldn't like him in our community. So, yeah. There's the human element. I mean, you can't remove the meatware from it quite yet. So,
any other questions? Sir.
I've been interviewed several times by PM for other people's security clearances. And one of the interesting things is one of the first things they say is all the information that you give is going to be available on Freedom of Information Act, so they can find out who you are and what you say, essentially. So how do you think that waters down, I guess, the information that they use to make a judgment? Because when somebody interviews me now, I'm not going to say anything really bad. I mean, I guess I could abstain from giving information, but I'm not going to, even if I don't really like the person.
Yeah.
If I really dislike them and want ill to that person, I'm not necessarily going to say anything bad, knowing that you can find out why he failed the clearance.
Yeah, that's a really interesting question. Reading through the decisions, it seems like most of the things that get quoted are the applicant themselves, and they don't reference their interviews very much. I think they build a background around, because a lot of people lie, but then, the government will somehow, it became clear that an applicant used marijuana while holding a security clearance in the 80s. Someone had to say that, so, yeah, I don't know. I think that, I don't know if people quite know the power of the Freedom of Information Act. I think we're still in the embryonic stages of the access that's going to give us. So I think that'll be, if I had to guess, this is a total guess, it'll become more of a consideration when more interesting data dumps come from the FOIA program. Also, when the FOIA program is not terribly broken and the government can exploit it to keep stuff out of your hands, right? So. Oh, they can. All right.
Any more questions?
And I'll be around if you want to chat. So.
All right. Well, let's give our speaker a round of applause. And just another reminder about the auction that's going on online, the raffle that's coming later, the pool party later. Another big thank you to our sponsors for making this all possible. The next talk will be in this room at 5 o'clock.
For an SCI.
Yeah.
The funny thing is, I think I can't believe that they use the poly, even though it's demonstrated polys aren't dependable.
Yep.
He's one of those guys that stays so calm,